Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome everybody to the special Municipal Council meeting for the City of Westmount for Monday, December 18th, 2023. Bienvenue tout le monde aux séances extraordinaires du Conseil municipal de la Ville de Westmount pour lundi le 18 décembre 2023. We have a couple council meetings tonight, so how this is going to work is we begin with our capital works budget, and then both Councillor Peart and I will speak about that with some further details. Then we will vote on that and we will take questions on that. But because this is a special council meeting, the rules are such that the questions have to pertain to the capital works budget. Following that, we will then move to our next council meeting, which is the overall operating budget, which also includes the capital works budget, which is scheduled for 5 o'clock. So we'll probably be able to roll right into that. Then following that, we have our regular and final council meeting for 2023, which has our typical motions on it in terms of salt and sweepers and things like that. So that's the agenda for the evening. So if you are joining us for the entirety of it, welcome. Or if you are just here to hear about the budgets, those will be done first. So we will begin with, and just a quick note before we begin, unfortunately, Councillor Bostock is unable to be with us tonight. She has a member of her family who is quite ill. And Councillor D'Amico is out of the country because he's very excited. His daughter is competing in the World Debating Competition. So while he's not here tonight, he has been very, very involved in the planning of the budget. And so Councillor Chamy will read the budget on his behalf, but while he's not here, he has been very involved in it. So I will hand it over to Councillor Kez for the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the agenda of the Special Council sitting December 2023 be adopted.
December 18th, 2023. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Gallery. All in favor? Carried. Item number 3, presentation of the 3-year capital expenditures program for the 2024, 25, and 26 fiscal years. I am going to begin with just a few notes on that before I hand it over to Councillor Peart, who will give some further details. Donc, bienvenue tout le monde, chers membres du Conseil, mesdames et messieurs. Welcome everybody, members of council, and ladies and gentlemen that are here with us tonight in the room as well online. Nous sommes heureux de vous présenter le programme triennial immobilisation, le PTI, 2024, 2025, 2026 de la Ville de Westmount. Depuis l'élection, il y a 2 ans, la modernisation de nos infrastructures est une priorité pour ce Conseil. Le PTI est une expression de notre vision pour le développement de notre ville. Ils nous permettent de disposer d'un outil de planification des investissements cohérents et adaptés à nos ressources. Elles nous permettent également établir un calendrier de réalisation des projets d'immobilisation et d'évaluer leur impact financier sur notre budget. Les investissements publics ont une très grande importance pour notre ville, car ils ont un impact direct sur la qualité de vie de des Westmountais. Ces investissements sont les fondations sur lesquelles repose notre avenir collectif. Il trace la voie vers une ville dynamique, offre à ses résidents des infrastructures modernes et des services de qualité. Dans cette optique, le PTI 2024, 2025, 2026 que nous vous présentons aujourd'hui est le fruit d'une réflexion approfondie guidée par le souci constant d'améliorer la vie quotidienne de chacun. Ainsi, au cours des 3 prochaines années, d'améliorer la vie des 3 prochaines années, une grande majorité des dépenses de PTI sont liées à l'entretien de nos parcs, nos routes, nos bâtiments municipaux, nos réseaux électriques et nos réseaux d'aqueduc. For quite some time, Westmount has relied on a pay-as-you-go system policy for most infrastructure investments, giving us a solid financial footing. Given the extent and the urgency of the investments that we need to make in the coming years, it is time to leverage other financing tools to ensure that we meet the challenges ahead. We are now faced with the challenge of needing to take on more and more urgent projects than we ever have in the past. In conclusion, our present capital works program embodies our commitment to a modern and resilient city. We are aware of the challenges and approach them with confidence, determination, and a clear vision for the future. Je souhaite remercier l'ensemble de l'équipe qui ont contribué à cette élaboration de ce programme ambitieux. So now I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Peart, who's going to have many more details of what can be expected in the 2024 capital works budget.
Merci, Madame la mairesse. Mesdames et Messieurs les membres du Conseil municipal, le programme triennal d'immobilisation de PTI 2024, 2025, 2026 que nous vous dévoilerons incarne notre engagement envers l'avenir et témoigne notre vision résolue pour une ville prospère et innovante. Avant de vous faire part de quelques projets majeurs à venir et les défis que nous devrons révéler, j'aimerais prendre un moment pour souligner quelques projets d'infrastructure que nous avons complétés cette année. En 2023, nous avons terminé 3 grands travaux majeurs de reconstruction de rue. L'avenue Mount Pleasant, entre le 300 Rosemount et la rue Sherbrooke-Ouest, l'avenue Grosvenor entre l'avenue Westmount et le Boulevard, et la rue Saint-Antoine entre Atwater et Rose de Lima. Conjointement à ces travaux de réfection de rue, nous avons procédé à 4 grands travaux de réhabilitation de conduites d'eau potable. Au niveau de nos bâtiments, nous sommes heureux d'avoir pu compléter le réaménagement de l'entrée principale de la bibliothèque publique, la phase 2 de rénovation de la salle mécanique de Victoria Hall, la reconstruction de murs de soutènement au parc King George et la restauration de la balustrade Summit Circle. Ceux-ci ne sont que quelques exemples de projets qui ont été réalisés. A lot has been done in 2023, and we want to keep up the good momentum next year. Approximately 100 small, medium, and large-scale projects will be part of the Capital Works program in 2024. Among these projects are the reconstruction of Upper Lansdowne Avenue between Lansdowne Ridge and Edgehill Road, the reconstruction of Dorchester Boulevard between St. Catherine and Green Avenue, about 10 waterworks projects that will include the replacement of some lead water service, and about 20 works and projects related to the maintenance and repair of public buildings. We also plan to invest nearly $4 million in various projects relating to our parks and green spaces. The new project office within the administration will also help us have more strategic and structured coordination for implementing all these projects from the city's various departments. The funding of the Capital Works program is a crucial and inevitable issue that we must tackle. While the previous Capital Works program budget forecast an expenditure of about $29 million for 2024, the current Capital Works program estimate for the next year is $35.49 million, approximately a 22% increase. $42.71 million for 2025 and $42.67 million for 2026. Everything indicates that these estimates could be revised upwards for the next few years. In 2024, as in previous years, we plan to continue financing a large part of the Capital Works program from our tax revenues and surpluses under the Pay-As-You-Go program. However, in light of the challenges we face, the time has come to reconsider our Capital Works program funding strategy. Our city will be 150 years old next year, and despite the efforts made over the years, much of our infrastructure urgently needs repair or renovation. For instance, 90% of the city's sewer network is over 80 years old, and 22% of the road network is over 50 years old and needs to be repaired or reconstructed. Almost every building owned by the city is in that same situation. An estimate by our Public Works Department indicates that there's around $100 million there's $100 million needed to maintain, renovate, and upgrade our buildings between now and 2027. These are just a few examples. A lot needs to be done, and time is not on our side. In recent years, we have increased the pace of our investments in our infrastructure and our annual quota of projects. But we need to step up our efforts because the consequences of our aging infrastructure and the effects of the climate crisis are intensifying. Please think of the increased recurrence and the intensity of storms and the impact on our sewer system. We have a major debt, an infrastructure debt. It's a debt that is growing as we fail to invest enough in our roads, green spaces, buildings, water, and electricity networks. Labor, equipment, and material costs seem likely to continue rising for years to come. In this context, financing the capital works program through a combination of tax revenues, accumulated surpluses, and subsidies may not be a viable strategy, given the scale of the future expenditures. It is time to consider, when possible and financially pertinent, other sources of funding, such as loans. Counterintuitively, using loans to finance specific projects will enable us to tackle our infrastructure debt effectively. In this regard, we decided that 22% of the Capital Works program budget for 2024 funding will come from a loan bylaw. Our objective is to optimize the use of debt while minimizing financial risk, ensuring a solid foundation for economic development and the efficient delivery of public services to our community. En terminant, je vous invite à consulter la carte interactive sur notre site web pour prendre connaissance de certains projets du PTI. Et je remercie tous les services impliqués dans la préparation et la présentation de ce PTI. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor Peart. And just for those that are online or those as well in the room, all the information from the budget has just been put up on the website, so you'll be able to access that information. So thank you very much for that. So now we move to item number. Does anyone else want to add any comments to this? This has been a thorough, lengthy process, and it's not. Certainly not all projects are on here that councillors would have wished, that I would have wished, and that's all part of having a capital works budget, is that we are constrained with obviously financial constraints, but as well in terms of the work that we're able to do within the city to ensure that you have mobility and whatnot throughout the city. So with those constraints in mind, we believe that none of these projects are necessary and absolutely necessary. They've been thoroughly vetted, they have been thoroughly debated, and that's how they end up on our 2024 capital works list. So we will now move to, does anyone else have any comments before we move to the adoption, where you will have an opportunity to comment as well? No? Okay. Item number 4, adoption of the 3-year capital expenditures program for the 2024, 25, and 26 fiscal years. I will ask Councillor Peart to move this.
Merci, Madame la Mairesse. I move that the 3-year program of capital expenditures of the City of Westmount for the 2024, 2025, and 2026 fiscal years attached hereto be adopted.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shammy will second that. Any further comments on this?
As you noted, this is a long, arduous process which has engulfed the administration, many departments in the administration for many months, and the various committees in the city have been involved in it through the stages. As Mayor Smith indicated, the list was a lot longer than what we were that we're able to.
Significantly longer.
The wish list was a lot longer than what we're able to deliver on, but it's the process of triage and deciding what we have the best chances of completing, what we're able to afford, what we're able to manage on a yearly basis. So there's a lot to do. There's more than we've ever done or ever targeted, but at the same time, yes, our project counts have increased, but in the past 2 years, the costs for each of these projects have increased significantly. Significantly.
In terms
so
of
it's not merely a function of the count of projects, but also the scope and the expense associated with each of these line items.
Yeah, and we're very pleased that we have a full team in terms of a management team to help see these projects reach completion. Okay, so we will now call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No, carried. So we will now move to question period before we close the meeting and then reopen the next meeting. So if there's any questions in the room or online, do we have any questions online? Why don't we take the in-room questions first for those that displaced themselves in the pouring rain? And then we will move to online for those that are. And it has to be on the PTI. And then if not, you can ask questions in the general council meeting, which will happen at 5:30.
Janice Kraut, 3745 The Boulevard. Well, I'm
Welcome.
glad to hear that after 3 years of people saying the pay-as-you-go was not sufficient, we'll now borrow money at 5% instead of 1%. But typical prudence. How much of the capital budget is going towards Hydro Westmount?
Do you have the specific line item there? I see you have it open. It's broken down, Hydro Westmount is broken down into what is municipal, sort of typical municipal costs, as well as capital expenses. You have the number in front of you?
Collectively, $2,425,000.
So we're going to put another $2,400,000. So as Councillor Aronson said, so we don't have to call Premier Legault or Hydro Quebec. That was his answer when we had our meeting on May 26th, that the reason why we have Hydro Westmount is because you didn't want to be dependent on Premier Legault or have to call Hydro Westmount for service. Yeah, that was the explanation we got for $18 million of funding for Hydro Westmount.
If I could just interject, I want to be precise because recall that Hydro Westmount also takes care of our, like beyond the electrical distribution, they also manage all of our electrical installations. So street lights would come into them, which would, traffic lights, anything that, any city that was being served by Hydro Quebec would. So there's the breakdown versus electrical services versus electrical distribution is contained within the $2,425,000.
Right, but we're continuing for the most part. How many, Councillor Shamey, you were are you still Commissioner of Hydro Westmount? How many employees does Hydro Westmount have?
They're between 30 and 35. There's some vacant positions between 30 and 35, and we'll check and get back to you.
And do you think that if we were connected to Hydro Quebec, that they would dedicate 35 people to service us?
I think Councillor Peart answered quite eloquently about the distribution of electrical power and the sustainability maintenance of our electrification of our city. So they're two different areas that need to be provided into the services for our residents.
So like, let's say
So
another.
thank you.
No,
And you-
just I have
there's-
another question if you don't mind.
But you've asked your two questions, so now we go to the next questions and you can go in the lineup afterwards.
All right.
Thank you.
Merry
Welcome.
Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. It's Nigel, 592 Chemin de la Côte Saint-Antoine.
Welcome.
Thank you. First, I cannot tell you, it was music to my ears to hear about this massive spending on infrastructure. You know, I've complained about it a lot, and a lot of people have heard me complain about it. I make jokes about it. So it's great to hear. Paul Marriott, who was the head of the WMA years ago, had been asking for going beyond pay-as-you-go. And I'm just happy to see that now, like the lady said before me, in a higher interest rate environment, that it's finally being done. My question specifically, oh, what, I'm not loud enough? Okay, my question is relating to this 24, 25, 26, is will there be any wiggle room? In other words, I know that the budgets, I know how budget works, I know what the constraints might be. Will there be any wiggle room? Because some of the streets that are mentioned are not, it means that there are some that are still going to be like the surface of the moon. So I'm wondering if there's any room for perhaps scraping the surface of some of our streets that aren't going to get the major overhauls.
So, as you know, and then I'll let Councillor Peart, if he wants to add in on this, as you know, a Capital Works budget is an envelope, essentially, but that is based on projections for what we believe
Okay.
these projects will cost. There was wiggle room this year where sort of, I guess it was probably in about July, where we shifted some funding into resurfacing as opposed to, which
Good.
I know you had written to me about as well, in terms of paving and some sidewalk repair as well. So there is always room to adjust, but knowing, I mean, how a municipality works, how we go out to tender, how that's a lengthy process for that. So our wiggle room is certainly less so than the private
Okay.
sector, but the capital works budget is based on an estimate of those projects set out. So Councillor Peart, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, does that, before I don't have much to add, so I was wondering if that answers your question, or?
Listen, I'm generally satisfied with what I've heard tonight. It's, I'm beaming. But yeah, I think so. I do have a WMA question, but I'll let someone else ask.
Okay,
that
and then you
question
can, certainly if the WMA question is pertaining to the operating or to general counsel, those question periods will come after.
Well, sort of. It does have something to do with infrastructure.
Okay,
At the corner of Lexington and Devon, there's a rise, a safety berm, if you will, which is useful. My daughter goes to school there. A lot of children walk through there. The only problem is it was constructed in such a way that there's a massive pool of water at one of the highest elevations in Westmount. So I'm wondering, a person who lives in District 1 had brought it to my attention today, and I said, well, I'll ask it council for you. Is there some kind of emergency work that can be done to make sure that does not happen again? Because we all know that water accumulation is not good for citizens. Cars go by, people can get splashed, not to mention the homeowners in the area. So is there anything that can be done?
so while Lexington is not on this year's capital works budget, it's certainly something that we will relay to our engineering team and see what we can do, and that's, I see them in the back taking note of that commentary.
Great,
So
guys.
Lexington and Devon from the speed hump that's at that corner.
Speed hump, that's
And
what it's
water
called.
accumulation. Okay, thank
So
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Overall,
you.
I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Season's greetings.
Welcome.
Yeah, and congratulations, we're here at the final meeting of the year. I don't have the breakdown of the capital budgets with me, but did I hear there was 4 million going to be attributed to parks? So what kind of projects?
Parks and green spaces.
What?
Sorry, parks and green spaces was the
Yeah,
line
so
item.
what kind of projects do you envision undertaking, and is Summit Woods included in any of them?
Yes, there is funding for Summit Woods that's allotted in the capital works budget in terms of beyond maintenance as well as an investment in Summit Woods. There's Westmount Park. We have to replace the jungle gym in Westmount Park, which is a significant investment. You want to read off that's way too small font for me. The Memorial Garden. Which is one of them. There's some pathways in the park, which, as I'm sure you're well aware, the pathways in both Westmount Park and KGP are in terrible shape. What other sort of bigger ones that are on this list? Then Stainer Park, the resurfacing of the tennis courts, which is going to get an investment as well. We've got, water fountains. There's a number of things that are all in our parks and our green spaces.
And do you know at this point how much you will be investing in Summit Woods?
Where's the Bois Sommet? We wouldn't want to disclose that. I mean, that's an estimate at this point as well, and we have to go out to tender on that.
Okay.
But we expect to make a significant investment in Summit Woods.
Thank you.
Which would be based upon a lot of the feedback from you and some of the group up there in terms of narrowing the paths, protecting Summit Woods from having all of these offshoot paths that have happened, protecting the entranceways, And then there's the, beyond the capital works investment, obviously, from the operating side with public security and just the being more present up there.
Well, I think over the years, we've provided a fair amount of information. Obviously, other people might do better or complement that information. So how would you proceed? Are you going to have like some kind of general meeting, or how do you say you want input from people, but I think by now we all kind of see what's going on up there and we know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe a meeting on Summit Woods would be a great idea in the new year to talk about some of the investment that's going to happen there.
Because there was talk of a plan for Summit Woods that I think even Councillor D'Amico mentioned it.
Why don't you want to answer that?
We're expecting an update and a plan that we will be out rolling throughout the year sometime in January. So hopefully, for sure, by the end of January.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions online?
Yeah, we have one question from Mr. Denis Bureau, 36 Burton Westmount. Three questions. Question one, after reading in the recent Info Westmount document that we can no longer delay investing in our roads, etc., one can conclude the city has a large infrastructure deficit. Will today's 3-year capital budget keep the deficit stable, lower it, or allow it to increase?
Thank you for your question. Do you want to? We had already addressed some of this, Mr. Bureau, which you may have heard in the commentary, but I think you'll be pleased to see an increase in spending on capital works and infrastructure. And as we said before in the commentary, this there is more work to be done, certainly beyond what we are planning for this year. Want to add anything?
No. I think we acknowledge that we have to catch up, and so by accelerating our investment, the intent is to close that gap over time. So I think we are making that, we're lessening the debt, the infrastructure debt, and ultimately I guess we'll be exchanging that for some financial debt. But if it's not showing up on one balance sheet, it's showing up on another.
Yeah, and it's what we've seen certainly over the past is when we don't make that investment, certainly it goes way up in price.
Question two, the annual capital budget has been missed in 4 of the last 5 years, likely adding to the infrastructure deficit. What steps has council taken to ensure that the city completes the planned capital program?
Thank you. We have had years, certainly post-COVID, where we had, certain projects like one that comes to mind is Summit Lookout, where we had to go out, I believe it was 3 times with public tender, where we had no bids on that. It was, where we were ready to have the work done. We had the financing to have the work done, and there were no bidders. So that has shifted a little bit this year, but not entirely. And so where we see issues and what we see them in our own operations as well, projects which require truck drivers and require moving of significant amounts of debris and things like that, we see challenges in that. So, or we have people bid on contracts and are not able to fulfill the contracts in a timely manner because their teams are too spread out on many other contracts. So the labor shortage is certainly having a significant impact on that. So while we did not have 100% completion rate like we've had in other years, we feel this year, especially with, we have a full team, we have our full engineering team, we have our special projects team, that we really feel that we can that we can attain these projects.
Last question. What is in the 3-year plan for Westmount Park?
Do you want to pull up that file again? Westmount Park is also an area that needs a significant amount of investment. One of them very specifically is around the play structure. which does not meet the needs of the park and the paths surrounding the play structure. Another highlighted one, which is not in this year's capital works, is the pond, which has definitely an issue with, needs constant repair and patching. So thank you. That's it for online questions. So we will adjourn the capital works budget, and now our capital works meeting, and we are late for our operating budget, so we will adjourn that meeting and we'll begin the next meeting.